The card that told the truth. My husband's business partner called before I even reached my car. My father's name came out of his mouth like a curse. The company card had been used 6 times in one afternoon, and none of the charges were mine. My name is Maya Reyes. I am 32 years old, and until that Tuesday, I believed the worst thing my father could do was ask me for money he never intended to repay. I was wrong. I was standing in the parking lot of the pharmacy where I work as a technician, keys already in my hand, when my phone lit up with 3 missed calls from my husband, Derek. When I called back, his voice was tight in a way I had never heard before. He asked me one question. Did I give my father the company card? I told him no. He said okay, and then he told me to come home because he had already called the police. Derek and I had been married for 5 years. He ran a small landscaping supply company with 2 partners, and he kept the business accounts separate from our personal ones on purpose, because he had grown up watching his own father lose everything to bad decisions made by people he trusted. He was careful. He was patient. He was the kind of man who read every line of a contract twice. So when I walked through our front door and found him sitting at the dining table with his laptop open and his jaw set like stone, I understood before he said a single word that something had already broken. Before I tell you what he showed me, tell me where you are watching this from and whether it is morning or night where you are. I like knowing how far a story like this can travel. And if you want to catch these stories as soon as they go up, this is a good moment to hit subscribe to Alex. Because what happened next in my kitchen is the part I still have trouble believing. Derek turned the laptop toward me. The account showed 6 transactions in under 2 hours, a tool rental store, a boat supply shop, a steakhouse, a tire shop, an electronics store, and then a decline for close to $2,000 at a furniture outlet. The approved charges alone came to almost $4,000. I felt my stomach drop somewhere near my shoes. My father had a debit card of his own tied to a checking account with maybe $60 in it. He did not have $4,000. He had never had $4,000. He must have found the card in your wallet, I said, already building him an excuse before anyone had accused him of anything. That was the shape my whole life had taken without me noticing. Derek shook his head slowly. He was not confused and he was not guessing. He told me that my father had come by the shop that morning while Derek was out doing a delivery, telling the front desk clerk that Derek said it was fine for him to grab the spare company card from the office drawer for a supply run. The clerk, who had met my father at 2 family barbecues and had no reason to doubt him, handed it right over. I sat down slowly across from Derek. Why would he say that? Because he knew it would work, Derek said, and it did. I wanted to defend my father. The instinct rose in me before I could stop it, the same way it always had. When he borrowed money and never paid it back, he was between jobs. When he used my name on a rental application without asking, he was just trying to help himself get back on his feet. When he showed up uninvited to our house and let himself in through the back gate, he was just excited to see his grandkids. Every violation came dressed up as love, and objecting to it always made me feel like the cruel one. He has never done anything like this before, I said quietly. Derek looked at me and there was no anger in his face, only tiredness. Maya, he said, he has been doing something like this for years. You have just never let yourself add it up. That sentence sat between us like a stone. He opened a second window on his laptop, a spreadsheet he had apparently been keeping for longer than I wanted to know. Small amounts here and there that never quite made sense. A $400 transfer 18 months ago, after my father claimed his truck needed emergency repairs, that Derek later learned went toward a fishing trip. A $200 charge on my own card that I had explained away as a mistake at the gas station, that turned out to be my father filling up a boat that was not even his. None of it, alone, looked like theft. Together, it looked exactly like what it was. Why did not you show me this before? I asked. I tried, he said, 6 months ago. You told me keeping a list made me sound like I was building a case against your family. I remembered that conversation now with a kind of sick clarity. I had called my father right after and repeated the whole argument to him, and by the next evening he had somehow become the victim, telling me Derek did not trust him and never had. My phone rang. It was my father. Derek did not tell me to answer it or ignore it. He just sat back and waited, the way a man waits for someone else to decide something he has already decided for himself. I put it on speaker. "Maya, thank God," my father said, his voice already climbing toward outrage. "Your husband is trying to say I stole from him. Do you believe that?" "Did you take the card?" I asked. "He offered it to me weeks ago, for emergencies." "Derek was not even here weeks ago to offer you anything," I said. "You told the front desk he said it was fine this morning." There was a pause, just a little too long. "I might have the days mixed up," my father said. "I am not going to be interrogated by my own daughter over a misunderstanding." "Did you spend $4,000? "Those were things I needed. Your husband can afford it, he does fine." And there it was, the same sentence dressed in different clothes that I had been hearing my whole life. "It does not matter what I take, because you have enough." Derek leaned toward the phone for the first time. "Tony," he said calmly, "bring back what you can and return the card tonight." My father's voice cracked instantly from anger into wounded disbelief, the transformation so smooth it barely took a breath. "You are going to humiliate me over this. I am family. Family does not walk into your business and lie to your employees," Derek said. My father hung up. For a long moment, neither Derek nor I said anything. I finally asked him how long he had suspected something like this might happen. "Since the wedding," he admitted. "Small things. Cash missing from my truck after your dad visited. A tab he ran up at a bar under my name that he swore was a mix-up. I never had proof strong enough to bring to you, and every time I tried, I ended up looking like the villain instead of him." "I am sorry," I said. "I am not telling you this so you apologize," he said. "I am telling you because when the police get here, he may say I gave him permission. And you are going to have to decide whether you repeat his story or tell them what actually happened." The doorbell rang before I could answer. 2 officers came in and Derek walked them through everything, calmly, without exaggeration, the receipts pulled up on his phone and the store clerk's statement already noted down. One of the officers turned to me and asked whether my father had ever been authorized to use company funds. "No," I said, and the word came out steadier than I expected. "Has he used your family's money without asking before?" the officer asked. "Yes," I said, "more than once." Writing that answer out loud, in front of a stranger with a badge, felt like setting down something I had been carrying since I was a teenager. Before leaving, the officers told us not to confront him ourselves, that they would try to reach him and see what could be recovered. As soon as they pulled away, Derek changed the code on the shop's back door and canceled the spare card entirely. "He is going to tell everyone you did this to him," I said. "He already has," Derek answered, turning his phone toward me. My father had posted in the family group chat, claiming Derek offered him the card out of guilt for missing a family dinner, then had him arrested out of spite the moment he actually used it. He said he feared for my safety in a marriage to a man that controlling. My aunt replied with 3 prayer hands emojis. My cousin said no father deserved to be treated like a criminal by his own son-in-law. Not one person asked why he had walked into a business he did not work for and taken a card that was not his. That evening my father showed up at our door anyway, shopping bags looped over both arms, banging on the doorbell camera, and shouting that he was not leaving until someone let him explain himself in person. Derek told him through the intercom to leave the bags and the card on the porch. My father emptied them out instead, right there on the steps, holding up a cordless drill and a steakhouse gift bag toward the camera like evidence of his own innocence. "Look at this," he said. This is not stealing, this is normal stuff. People buy normal stuff. Where is the card? Derek asked. My father patted his pockets, stalling, until the patrol car turned onto the street, and then his whole posture changed. His shoulders dropped. His voice thinned into something soft and wounded. By the time the officer reached the porch, he had tears sitting right at the edge of his eyes, telling a new version of the story where Derek had offered him the card weeks earlier and only turned cruel once he saw the total. The officer asked whether he had entered the shop with permission that morning. I am basically family there, he said. Derek and I go way back. That is not what I asked. He looked past the officer, straight at me, and said the words that had worked on me my entire life. Maya, tell them the truth. I said. You do not work there. You were never told you could take that card. His face went slack, like I had pulled a chair out from under him. Derek stepped forward with his phone and showed the officer the shop's own security footage, time-stamped from that morning. It showed my father walking straight past the front desk, into the back office, opening the drawer himself before the clerk even noticed him, sliding the card into his jacket pocket before he ever said a word to anyone. There had been no offer. There had been no conversation. There had only been an empty office and a man who knew exactly where to look. You put cameras in there to trap me, my father said. I put cameras in there because things kept going missing after you visited, Derek answered, and his voice did not rise even once. My father turned back to me one last time. Maya, tell them I did not mean any harm. For years that sentence had ended every conversation before it could finish. This time I just looked at him and asked the question I should have asked a long time ago. What kind of father needs his daughter to lie for him to still love him? He did not answer. The officer asked him to surrender what he had left and to come down to the station to sort out the rest. He went, still muttering that this would ruin his name in the family, that everyone would hear about how his own daughter turned against him. The following weeks were quieter than I expected and somehow harder because of it. My phone filled with messages from relatives calling me disloyal, calling Derek controlling, calling the whole thing an overreaction to a man who just needed a little grace. I typed out long explanations 3 separate times, listing the footage, the transactions, the missing card, and deleted every one of them before sending, because I finally understood that some people were never confused. They simply believed a father's comfort mattered more than anyone else's property. I sent one short message instead. The store has the footage and the police have the report, so I will not be debating facts in a group chat, and then I left the conversation entirely. Derek found me in the kitchen afterward. That might be the healthiest thing you have done all year, he said. I almost defended him again tonight, I admitted. I know, he said, but you did not. The case moved slowly, the way these things do. My father eventually agreed to repay what could not be returned, to complete a diversion program, and to stay away from the shop entirely for a set period of time. It was not a dramatic ending. It was quieter than that, and somehow it mattered more, because for the first time in his life, he had to say out loud on paper that what he did was wrong, instead of finding someone else to carry the blame for him. Some relatives stopped speaking to us. A few came back once they realized how much of what he had told them simply was not true. I stopped chasing the ones who never came back at all. I learned that people who needed me to ignore evidence in order to remain close to me were never really offering me family. They were offering me a seat at the table only if I agreed to stay quiet. Derek and I started going to counseling, not because we were falling apart, but because I wanted to understand how close I had come to choosing comfort over truth without even noticing I was doing it. I apologized for making him prove the same thing over and over, for treating his caution as an insult instead of a warning. He accepted it, but he did not pretend the last few months had not left a mark, and I did not ask him to. A few months later, my father sent a letter through a family friend, saying Derek had ruined his reputation and that I had misunderstood him, the way he always insisted I had. Near the bottom, One line gave him away completely. He wrote that he hoped someday I would understand what my husband forced him into. I read it once, folded it, and put it in the same drawer as the police report. That night Derek and I sat at the same table where all of this had started, and the room felt different, not because my father was gone from our lives, but because his version of events no longer had the power to move furniture in my head. For years I thought protecting him meant shielding him from every consequence, that love and obedience were the same thing. They were never the same thing. Peace that depends on a lie is just fear wearing a calmer face. My father screamed that Derek had humiliated him. The truth was simpler than that. Derek never raised his voice once. He just refused to argue with a story that was not true, and he let the evidence do what evidence does. And when I finally stopped defending the person who was hurting us, I did not lose my family. I found out which parts of it had been standing beside me the entire time. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. All names, characters, and events are fictional, created only for storytelling and entertainment. And a small reminder before you go, there is a real kind of peace that starts the moment you stop chasing explanations from people who were never being honest with you in the first place. Sometimes the pattern is the only explanation you are ever going to get, and that is enough to build something better on.